All right. Well, we will go ahead and get started. So thank you for all of you who are attending tonight. My name is Julie Dressler, and I am the program manager for the Margaret Hackett Family Program. So I get the privilege of working with Matt Larsen at the Illinois Spina Bifida Association on a number of projects throughout the week. So before we dive into our presentation tonight about ABLE accounts, I wanted to just point out that there are a number of representatives from various organizations on this call tonight. We've got Matt Larsen, who is here from Illinois Spina Bifida Association. We've got Amanda Garzon, who is here from the Hydrocephalus Association. We've got Heather Nabel, who is here from Concord Chiari, and myself, who is here from the Margaret Hackett Family Program. So if at any point in the night you have questions that are specific to any of these organizations, any of these conditions, please feel free to drop them in the chat or let us know. So of course, this presentation will be about ABLE accounts, but if there's additional resources that we can offer to you, please let us know. We've got all of our contact information on the slide, and this will also be emailed to you at the end of the night as well. So from there, I will go ahead and I will let Matt Larsen kick off tonight's presentation.
Julie, thank you very much, and thanks to all the attendees, and I'm grateful to the Margaret Hackett Family Program for this opportunity really to collaborate with Concord Chiari and Hydrocephalus Association and University of Chicago. It's really great to work together in serving people with central nervous system congenital anomalies, and I know this is often the conditions that people have are often rare conditions, so it's really good to work together and share information. So tonight I'm going to be talking about ABLE accounts, and I'm going to be using a presentation, which I'm going to bring up on the screen here, and I'm going to turn off my video but share my screen. I'm going to be using a presentation from the National Disability Institute, and this presentation is part of a financial wellness curriculum that they've developed, and it was developed for people and service providers in the state of Illinois. However, ABLE accounts are a program that is in federal law, and so all of the issues here tonight, though in the details, will be applicable nationwide, and we'll talk more about the differences between state to state. But if you have any questions about ABLE accounts, there's going to be a lot more information throughout and at the end. But if anyone doesn't understand a term I'm using or has just a question for clarification, please go ahead and let us know as we go. I think Julie's going to be keeping an eye on the Zoom chat function. And if we have time, we'll have, at the end, we can do some Q&A. But I know we have a lot to go through here, so I'm going to try to keep it moving, but there's a lot of detail as well. So thank you again for the opportunity to present tonight. I'm really grateful for that. All right. And again, I'm the Executive Director of the Illinois Spina Bifida Association. So we serve people throughout the state of Illinois. And one of the issues that we've found to be particularly useful is helping people with their financial wellness. And in the case of ABLE accounts, there's a few key things that people can do. It's helpful to have for people who want to save money, for people who, and this is for people who have a disability and their family members who want to make long-term financial plans, for people with disabilities who want to work and keep their necessary medical benefits and other long-term services and supports. So we're going to talk about how all these fit together. So an ABLE account is a type of account that was authorized by Congress, and it's written into the IRS tax code, and it allows people to save money And the people who are eligible to have this type of account have to have a disability, and they can use the money in these accounts to pay for what's called qualified disability expenses, which we'll talk about that more in a little bit. Mostly things that are for the direct benefit of the person with a disability. And there are some tax advantages to the account, which is not of a highlight of this presentation. If anyone has more questions about that, I can talk about some resources at the end. But in their tax structure, they're similar to the college 529 accounts. So the one myth that people often face is that people who receive disability benefits are not allowed to save money or receive it as a gift. But the reality is, with an ABLE account, qualified individuals can save money without affecting their benefits. Family and friends can deposit money directly into an ABLE account and not affect the account owner's eligibility for public benefits. And ABLE savings can be used to pay for qualified disability expenses that we'll talk about more in a little bit that improve the health, independence, and quality of life of the ABLE account owner. So this way, it makes it possible for a person who has a significant disability to save money, and not affect eligibility for public benefits like supplemental security income, or SSI, Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI, Medicaid, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP, or Housing and Urban Development, HUD assistance, or the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program, financial aid, or employment training services. And the unifying, the common theme between all those programs is that they are all federal programs, but they're all have means test or an asset test. So your eligibility depends on how much money you have in the bank. And these types of ABLE accounts allow you to save money and still access these services. And the rationale here is that people with disability have a lot of expenses, and that you would not necessarily have without your disability. Whether it, in the case of spina bifida, maybe it's a wheelchair, maybe it's an accessible vehicle, maybe your disability affects your ability to work. And so when, for many years, advocates were pushing in the disability community, were pushing to pass this legislation because for people who have a medical need, simply having a Medicaid or SSI or these other benefits is not a choice. People need long-term services and supports just to survive. However, you can only have $2,000 to your name, for example. It's a very difficult experience. So you don't want, people did not want, people, advocates, and then indeed legislators didn't want people with disabilities having to live in poverty or choose between financial stability and the long-term services and supports that they needed. So in 2014, ABLE accounts were created through an act of Congress. And what's remarkable, and I always talk about this, is there were 0 no votes in Congress. Nobody voted against this in Congress when it was put forward. It took a while to get passed, but it's really a great program that I think people really say is common sense, and it allows people to save their own money. So it's not federal money, but it does allow you to keep benefits while developing your financial security. So these accounts are in the name of the person who has a qualifying disability. And that person with a disability is the account owner. The ABLE account, but a variety of people can contribute to the account. The ABLE account owner, or family, friends, or a special needs or pooled trust can all contribute money into a person's ABLE account. A 529 college savings account may also be rolled over into an ABLE account, and family members may choose to contribute some of their 529 funds. Looking at Illinois specifically, and I'm going to go back and forth on some of these slides here that you see on the screen. The Illinois ABLE program allows taxpayers who contribute to an Illinois ABLE account a state income tax deduction of up to $10,000 if filing as an individual, or up to $20,000 if married filing jointly. But always consult with a tax advisor to discuss specific situations. I'm mentioning Illinois here. When Congress authorized and when the ABLE accounts, when it was signed into law by the president, it said states may set up their own ABLE accounts. Not every state has an ABLE account program. However, if your state does not, you can set up an ABLE account with many other states. There's a few ABLE account programs that are only open to Illinois residents, but many state programs are open to people across the country. However, there are some trade-offs in terms of advantages and disadvantages between the different programs, and so we'll talk more about where to do some comparison shopping. But we'll be talking about tonight about Illinois ABLE accounts. And so who is eligible? So in this case, you are eligible to have an ABLE account if you have at least one of the following things is true. One is if you have a disability with a written disability certification from a licensed physician that can be produced if requested. That's key, if requested. Or you experience blindness as determined by the Social Security Act, or you are eligible for SSI, Supplemental Security Income, or SSDI, Social Security Development Disability Income, because of a disability. And your disability was present before age 26. So, for example, with people with spina bifida, you are born with the condition. So if you have spina bifida, you are eligible to have an ABLE account. And again, if the issue is in question, then you can always submit a doctor's note. But if it's a condition that was present at birth and it's a significant disability, you don't have to submit any medical documentation to open an account. So I see we have one question so far about, thank you, about ways to compare the different states' programs to find the one that is best. Yes, there are some key ways. I will get into that in just a moment. And thank you, great question. And so I'm going to just review here. Don't want to skip ahead, but so these slides are going to talk a lot about how to open it and what you can use it on. One of the things I'll talk about how you can compare and contrast. So the ABLE account, and this is not in the slides, but the ABLE account can take one of two forms. You can open it either as a checking account, or you can open it as an investment account. There is no savings account option. And so when you go, and we'll talk more about how you open an account, but when you open an account, excuse me, when you open the account, you choose whether it's going to be a checking or savings, or you can have a combination of both. And one of the things to look at is when you're deciding is, well, what do I want to use it for? Do I want to use it to pay some of my regular living expenses, or do I want to use it as more of a long-term savings vehicle or investment vehicle? So if it's for expenses that you want to have on a regular basis, the checking account option is more useful. And many states, including Illinois, offer checking accounts that have a debit card. And so ABLE account checking accounts that have a debit card. So that is useful. You can use that at the store, at the gas station, at the doctor's office. And so if a state does not have a debit card option, that could be a disadvantage. You can also look at what the fees are on the account. Each state has its own fees, and I'll show you where you can find those. And there's tax advantages and disadvantages to other ones. But most of the considerations, I think, are practical ones, saying, well, how often do you want to use the account? And can you access it for what your needs are in a way that is convenient for you? If you want to set up as an investment vehicle, you can choose a range of investments from cautious to more aggressive, and each ABLE account program has a different range of investment options, and you can research those on your own or talk to a tax advisor. We're not going to talk about investment options on tonight's call, but in general, we'll talk about ABLE accounts in general and how they interact with your benefits that you may have. So another question is, can an ABLE account be set up retroactively if the person is older than 26 but was disabled before age 26? Yes. Yes, if the person can set up an ABLE account at any age, as long as their disability, the onset of the disability was before age 26. Yeah, thank you. I hope that answers your question, but thank you. Excellent question. And another question on here. If your needs change, can you roll over one kind of ABLE account into a different kind? So yes, you can roll over one type of ABLE account into a different state's ABLE account program. So one key is you can only have one ABLE account at a time. So let's say you are in one state that you really like their checking option, right? And you're using it for regular expenses. And we say there's another state that really has a good investment option that you like. You can roll over the entirety of your ABLE account to that other state. You can only have one at a time. But yes, you can. While some states have residency restrictions, you can roll your account over to other places at your convenience. So, good questions. Thank you. So, getting back, and we talked about how it works with your SSI benefits, supplemental security income. And so, this is regarding all benefits. I always make a key distinction here. ABLE accounts do not affect your income limits. They don't address anything on they don't address your income limits for benefits. They address the asset limits for your benefits. So in most cases, it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you can save. So that's why we say how to save with ABLE. Whenever you're considering opening up an ABLE account, or if you are wondering how your benefits might be impacted by an ABLE account, we always recommend talking to the caseworker at the agency that provides your benefit. The ABLE accounts were designed specifically to work with Medicaid, to work with Social Security benefits and HUD benefits, or other programs that we talked about, like LIHEAP or Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So if you ever have a question, you can call that government agency and say, if I opened an ABLE account and if I had this amount of money in there, how would it affect my benefits? And if the first person you talk to doesn't know about ABLE accounts, ask to speak with a supervisor, because ABLE accounts are not some new strange thing. This is an IRS tax code. It's a nationwide program. And if that person doesn't know about it, fine. Just ask if you could have a reference to someone else in the agency or in that customer service team who may be able to address it, because they are specifically designed to work with these benefits. And then we always say, go ahead and check in there and try to get a response about how it would affect your situation, just to make sure that you know. However, there are some bright standards here, bright line standards that we can talk about that gives you some confidence in moving ahead. So the first is talking about how ABLE accounts and SSI work together. So people, if you have an ABLE account, you can save up to $100,000 in that ABLE account, and it does not affect the amount you get in your SSI check. So it doesn't count as an asset limit. Now, if your income changes, if you are making more money, it may, through a job, for example, it may affect it, but not the total amount that's in your account. Even if you go over that $100,000, which would be a good problem to have, then your check is suspended, but you don't. You're not ineligible for the SSI program. You're not kicked off the program. Your check is suspended. Your benefits are suspended, but you're not in trouble for that. You just don't get a monthly check. If we talked about the difference between income and assets. So they don't, this third point here, if you have a family member or a friend, or if you have a special needs trust that gets rolled over into your ABLE account, or if it comes directly from a 529 savings account, that is not countable income. That is money that you can have in your account, and it doesn't count towards your asset limits. Money from a job is a countable income, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And likewise, interest earned on ABLE investments is not countable or taxable when spent on qualified disability expenses. I'm going to talk about Medicaid here, and then we'll talk more about these qualified disability expenses. Again, ABLE savings do not change your eligibility for SSDI, Medicare, Medicaid, financial aid, housing assistance, SNAP, or voc rehab services. If you have questions about financial aid, there's a little bit more detail here. I'm happy to answer those questions, but I don't go into much into financial aid at this point. We talked about who is eligible, and thank you again for those questions. So there is a number of scenarios that we see as common scenarios when people may want to think about having an ABLE account. And one, they're here listed here on the screen, and I'll tell you a few that I've seen just in terms of my experience working with individuals and families living with spina bifida. Let's say a person has Medicaid or SSI, and a relative wants to pass on some money to them, or let's say there's an inheritance. If that person sets up an ABLE account, or there's an ABLE account set up for that person, that inheritance can go directly into the ABLE account and not affect the person's benefits. Likewise, if a person is starting to work in high school or college or later on, and they, of course, they have long-term services and supports through Medicaid, and they count on that income from SSI to make sure that they can meet their needs. Well, ABLE accounts you can use an ABLE account to get a part of the direct deposit from your paycheck to go straight into there and keep those benefits. Now, you can only earn so much, but and that's something it would be good to talk with a caseworker about what your individual income limits are. However, it's a great way to get people keeping their benefits that they need for their health and well-being, but then also entering the workforce or expanding their participation in the workforce. So, one, how do you make the decision to open an ABLE account? Well, we talked about, well, again, what is your goal for savings? Is it, do you want to save money so that you can better handle your monthly expenses? Or do you want to save money if you for longer term things? And that goes into some of the decision making for whether you want to open a checking or the investment option in ABLE accounts. Another kind of practical point here. People say, well, where do I open an ABLE account? and we talk about these expenses in a little bit. I have here on the screen, we'll get to this, it says how to open an ABLE account. Well, in Illinois, you can open an account either online or by phone. And you share some personal information like you would setting up a bank account. So people say, well, where do I find these ABLE accounts? Each state has an ABLE account program, and each state with an ABLE account program has hired a sort of ABLE account program administrator. I will show you where to find the listings of all the state ABLE accounts, and they have on them the website or the phone number where you can open up an ABLE account. You cannot go to your local bank and say, do you have ABLE accounts? You have to go through this one specific website or one specific phone number for the state program that administers the ABLE account. Many states do contract with a bank to administer the funds for their ABLE account. For example, in Illinois, Fifth Third Bank is the financial services provider for Illinois ABLE accounts. But you cannot go to a Fifth Third Bank branch that you may find and say, I'd like to open up an ABLE account here. You've got to go and open it up online or with the Illinois ABLE account phone number. So, and then through that specific phone number or website, then they will talk about all the options. So again, we'll talk about what you need to get one set up, the practical details, but that's a key thing to remember. You can't just you can't just go to a bank or other financial services provider and say, do you have ABLE accounts? You have to go to one specific place in the for each state program. I've talked very many times, and you've asked about, well, how can I see what these state programs are? I'm going to skip ahead. We will come back. But here's really a great resource for the big overview for ABLE account information. It is the ABLE National Resource Center. All right, and I'm going to ask you all, I'm going to open up their website here, and I need you to tell me, I'm going to, just a moment, I'm going to do a new screen share, and Julie, I'm going to have you tell me if you cannot see this. Can you now see the ABLE account, ABLE
Yes.
National Resource Center? Okay, great, thank you. So it's ablenrc.org. And they've got lots of good information. This website is also sponsored by the National Disability Institute, who put together some of the information that I'm reviewing here. So you can say, what are ABLE accounts? But here, get started. This is a great one here. You can go, if you go into Get Started, you can say View All State Programs, and they will show you. I tease our neighbors in Wisconsin that they may have superior sports teams, but they don't have an ABLE account. ABLE account jokes are not that good jokes, but I make them nevertheless. I have to compensate somehow for Illinois' inferior sports performance here. So you can see all the different states, but then, and you say, well, how do I pick? So one really useful tool is to go, you can search by ABLE program features, and you say, I want one. You say, where do I live? Okay, so I live in Illinois, right? And I say, I want one that has a debit card, or I want one that has a tax deduction. I want one that's FDIC insured. You can hit submit, and they'll show you all the states that have the relevant information there. And I think this is pretty useful. Or let's say you want to compare between the different states. You can go back to use the 3-state comparison tool, and you say, I liked the Illinois one, and I liked I liked the Arizona one, and I like the Iowa one. Let's see how the Iowa one looks. All right. So notice I'm not making any jokes about Iowa people. We have Iowa people on the call, and I want to be nice to our hosts here. So we're going to be very friendly to Iowa. I just want that noted on the record. Okay, Julie, we're good?
Yep.
All right, I'm just being polite here. So if I live in Illinois and say, okay, Illinois, I'm obviously can enroll in Illinois. I cannot enroll in Arizona, but I can enroll in Iowa. Okay. And if I'm if I'm in Illinois, I cannot get a tax deduction on my Illinois taxes. I have to be an Iowa resident. And then you can go down here and say, oh, okay, Fifth Third Bank is the administrator for all those. There is initial minimum contributions of $25. There are annual set fees. So there's a quarterly maintenance fee, and depends on what your balance is. There is required minimum contributions, and you can just go down here like any other bank account, and you can see what the different fees and comparisons are. So I think this is a really useful tool. And then once you decide, okay, I want to learn more about this specific state, you can go back to the Get Started and view all state programs. And you say, okay, I want to look at the actual website for Illinois Able or any other state that has it. So you click on that state, and then here's the program name, and here's more information in greater detail. And then you can click on their website. And on this website, illinoisable.com, there's an enroll button here if you want to enroll online, or there's also a phone number for people who don't have the internet, and you can enroll that way. And then let's say you really want to get the details of the program. You can go to what's down here at the plan disclosure documents. And can everyone still see my screen? Well, anyways, it's going to be a PDF. It's like 120 pages, but that's all the nitty gritty and the fine print about the program. And so that's the that kind of round. There's plenty more things to talk about, but maybe I'll pause there. Any questions at the moment so far? All right, well, feel free to use the chat if anyone has a question, and I'm going to talk about what you can use the ABLE accounts for. What are these qualified disability expenses that you can use the ABLE accounts for? Right? I'm going to go back here, and so there's a few key things to remember about qualified disability expenses. This first is the expenses have to be of the person living with the condition, with the eligible disability. They don't have to be for the exclusive benefit for that person, however. So let's say the ABLE account holder lives in a house, and they live in a house with another person. Both, that's fine. The ABLE account can be used for housing expenses, even if other people live there who are not the ABLE account holder. However, the ABLE account holder has to live there. It has to be for the benefit of the ABLE account holder. Other people can have, indirect benefits because they also live in the house. So the heat of the house, or repair the roof of the house, and they benefit from that. But the person who's with the eligible disability and who's the holder, it has to be for their direct benefit. What happens to the money in your account if your symptoms improve and are able to work? So the goal of the ABLE accounts, you definitely do want, if you can work, working is great. So the disability, I'm not sure if it's, for example, great question. To be eligible, if your disability is one that may improve over time, you may want, and if you I think the key thing here is not that you are able to work, but would a physician still say that you have a disability? Okay. If your disability is something you're going to live with lifelong, it doesn't matter what your ability level is. It just matters based on your diagnosis. If your disability is something that you can, for example, be cured of, or the symptoms of the condition can go away, or then that's a great question. You'd probably want to ask the able account administrators in the state. I don't know the answer to that, but for the purposes of people who have lifelong conditions, it doesn't matter what your ability level is. It only matters what your diagnosis is and what your disability was. And so let me stop there and just Julie, does that answer that question here? I saw there was a note on the chat. Is that
There's actually an additional question. Yes.
About what?
So the next question is, does that mean that it can be used for the mortgage or just a portion to pay the mortgage, the ABLE account?
Great. All right. So let's get back to then what it can be used for. The ABLE account can be used for a wide range of things. I'm going to answer it broadly, but then more specific. So thank you for this question about mortgage. So, so I'm going to go, can people see these list of qualified disability expenses on the screen?
Yes, I can see them.
Okay, thank you. So there is broad categories here, and I'm going to jump through these. There's housing, transportation, medical, education, employment, and there are more. These are broad categories. The legislation was written in a way to give wide eligibility for the things that people can use these expenses for. There is not a hotline where you can go and say, does my expense meet the qualifications? No, there is no government or no agency that's going to give you an authoritative answer. Yes, this is qualified. No, it's not qualified. How this works is that if the expense falls into one of these broad categories, then you can assume, and it's for the direct benefit of the person living with the condition, be it spina bifida or hydrocephalus or Chiari, then you make the expense, but you hold on to your receipts. And that way, and you note, if it's not clear on the receipt, you note what the expense was for. In the event that you get audited, then you have to demonstrate that this expense was for the benefit of the person with a disability, and it falls under one of these broad categories. So the idea here is that you need to justify it, but there is not, and I have not heard of, and the general, because it's so broad and because there's no place to check in on, like this, the tax code is very specific with detailed instructions. This list is the kind of the extent of the guidance. Generally, they're not looking to really find detailed distinctions. As long as it meets one of these categories, that's generally okay. If you have a question, if you're concerned, if you're really not sure, does it meet? What I always recommend is to always have two types of accounts. Do not put all your individual funds into only an ABLE account. It's good to have a regular checking account or a regular savings account in addition. That way, if you have an expense that either doesn't meet the qualified disability expenses, or if you're not sure, then you can be better safe than sorry and do it out of your regular checking account. and just use the ABLE account for your qualified disability expenses. So the question went back to say, you know, about how about a mortgage? It can be any housing expense for a resident or that houses a person with a disability. As long as that ABLE account holder is living in that residence, it can be any expense towards paying for that house or maintaining that house or heating or cooling that house where the person with the disability resides. Hope that answers your question about, you know, what part of it. This is, I'll give you another way to think about it. Let's say the person, this is not housing, but this goes back to the direct benefit question. Let's say you have an ABLE account and you say, you know, it's holiday season. I'd really like to give some gifts to my family and friends. As much as that would help out, you know, a little extra money at holiday gift giving time, sure, it comes in handy. However, gifts to your family and friends are not for the direct benefit of the person with the disability. So that person with a disability with the ABLE account may want to have some extra spending cash to do some nice things for some other people, but it's not for that person's direct benefit. So that would be something that would not be a qualified disability expense. So better to come out of a regular checking account. Going back to like, well, how do we have these two accounts? Another thing that I recommend as a practical tip is that if you have an ABLE account and a regular checking account, a good way to do it is to have your income source, whether it's your government check or your paycheck, direct deposited but split into two accounts. That way, one of them goes directly into one portion of the money goes directly into the ABLE account. Another portion of the money goes directly into your regular checking or regular savings account. Because you always want to have both tools. You want to have a regular one and then an ABLE one. So I hope that answers the question there. But there are some things that you can't do it on. So for example, right now, qualified disability expenses do not cover alcohol or illegal substances or gambling. You cannot use ABLE accounts for those expenses. But if you have a question, if you're not sure, you can check that ABLE National Resource Center website that we looked at, and they'll have links to various updates if there are any updates through state or federal legislation. Or I'd say just spend the money out of a non-ABLE account. And again, better safe than sorry. And as I mentioned, just keep receipts, and you can keep them with your taxes. And that way, in case you do get audited, you can say, this is what this expense was for, and this is how it was for the direct benefit of the person living with a disability who is the ABLE account holder. So I'll pause there. Questions? Anything we'd like to go over again on that?
I saw that Lainey raised your hand earlier. Did you still have a question? Oh, no question. Okay, we're good to move on.
All right, and I see, thank you. So one question here is, if you have an investment account, how and when can you make withdrawals? Great, all right, great question. Let's look at that. And this is a kind of a practical thing that I'm gonna go to one of the state websites. And we're doing pretty good on time. We've still got 14 minutes left before 8 o'clock. Before I go to answer that investment withdrawal, I'm just going to cover some highlights on the presentation. And then there's a couple other questions here about close. Oh, you know what? There's a few more qualified disability expenses and questions. I want to answer those before we move on to the investment. I will get to that investment question. Thank you. So one question is about whether qualified disability expenses cover basic expenses such as groceries. I'm going to read you what the guidance says on here, and I'm going to be very specific because this was one that was a little more detailed than I had initially thought. If you could hold for just one moment here. Make sure I have that information in front of me. Okay, so here is one note. If you have SSI, people who receive SSI must spend your SSI money on housing and food. So you have to spend down that money on housing and if you have additional housing and food expenses, you can use it for in food. So that list was not exhaustive there that I sent. If we go, I can see if on National National Resource Center, they may have a more detailed list. We can go there. That's the one food thing though. If you have an ABLE account and you get SSI benefits, you have to spend those on housing and food. You can't just save those and without spending them down on housing and food. See here, you can put, I think you can put your SSI check into your ABLE account and then use it to spend it down on housing and food. So housing and food and groceries are qualified disability expenses. Other question, would general purchases such as clothes or hobbies qualify? So yes, so I think clothes, I think, so then that's a, I guess that's, we get into more of the gray area here. And let's go to the national website. One moment, please. I'm going to, and we'll get, we're going to go to websites for both of these answers. Also the question about how to withdraw from an investment account. Great questions. Thank you. I'm going to go to the web screen. And all right, can everyone see the internet site that we've got up here, the ABLE account, Illinois ABLE account?
Okay, yes, now we can see it.
Okay, great. I'm going to go to ablenrc.org. Okay. And let's see here. And I'm setting, I'm going to go, this is, I'm going to go to resources. I believe that's where the qualified disability expense information is. Yeah. Frequently asked questions. Click on qualified disability expenses. And I'm going to say, what can funds in an ABLE account be used for? So it says here, ABLE account funds may be used for qualified disability expenses, which may include any expense related to the beneficiary as a result of living a life with a disability. Examples of these expenses may include education or other expenses which help improve the health, independence, or quality of life. So that is a good general framework, health, independence, quality of life. And then it says examples of qualified disability expenses include, but are not limited to, and this includes basic living expenses like food. I consider clothing to be a basic living expense. Entertainment, I think, is a kind of a gray area. There is, you know, someone asked me, what about my cable bill? I said, that's probably a gray area. You know, you could say, well, I only use cable to watch educational documentaries. But I think that's a gray area where if it's for a hobby, you may want to spend that money out of a regular checking account if it doesn't fall into one of these general categories. So again, education, housing, transportation, employment, training and support, assistive technology, health, prevention and wellness, financial management, etc. But I'd say food and clothing are basic living expenses. Hobbies are important, and if there's an educational component to the hobby, you could say that would fit there, but into a bit of a gray area. And then, thank you, great questions. Hopefully that answers we answered the groceries one. We talked about general purchases. I'd say if it's a basic living expense, yes. Okay, let's look at if you have an investment account, how and when can you make withdrawals? Excellent question. So let's go to, let's find one of the state programs here. And I'm going to go to get started, view all state programs. And we'll go to Illinois. And we'll go on to, so here they have a little overview, and in the overview for Illinois, they have withdrawal hold rules, and it says contribution to the investment options made by check, recurring contribution, or electronic funds transfer will be available for withdrawal after 5 business days, or 10 business days if there's a change of address. In that case, and maybe another question is, or maybe you're limited to a certain number of withdrawals. Perhaps you would have to sell securities to get the money out. So that for those detailed questions, I would go to that plan disclosure document that was linked from their website. And I'm going to do Control F and do withdraw. And you can see it's 131 pages. So we could read more about that. You can read more individually about that, but then they're going to go over the details about how to withdraw investments. But in that case, I believe you're selling securities, so you probably do not have as many withdrawals as you can do. For example, the checking account, the debit account, you can withdraw money all the time, your debit card, but there may be only a certain number of, you may be only able to make a certain number of withdrawals selling securities with the investment accounts. So the plan disclosure documents for each state will give you more guidance on that. And you can also you can call the customer service line for a state, and they can give you, you can ask them before you dive into that long-term document. And then the question was explain, another question, couple things. Does the ABLE account require a trustee? If let's say there's a person with a disability, and that person with a disability is legally independent and manages their own financial affairs, then that person can open up the ABLE account on their own. If the person with a disability has a guardian because of their age, or because they are an adult but still have a guardianship by a parent or other caregiver, then the person who has the guardianship, they would open up the ABLE account on that person's behalf. But the accounts do not require trustees if the person is legally independent and an adult. So explain expenses for oversight and monitoring. Let me go back to the qualified. I'm going to go back to the ABLE National Resource Center website here. And excellent questions. You know what? We are just about on time. I can answer that one directly about oversight and monitoring, but in general, it's anything for the direct benefit and health and independence and quality of life for the person with the condition who's the ABLE account holder. And those are pretty broad things, but again, if you have Medicaid, if you have SSI, and you're wondering how the amount I'm saving in the ABLE accounts may affect my benefits, always good to check with your caseworker, and then they can tell you more. I'm going to go back, and there's a couple of slides I just want to make sure we cover and just wrap up the presentation because I know we're almost done. So we talked about, I've got a lot more information in the presentation here about creating your own savings plan, creating your own spending plan. That's kind of basic budgeting information. But if you have a question about creating a spending and savings plan, go to nationaldisabilityinstitute.org/downloads. And if you have questions about ABLE accounts, you can go to ABLE National Resource Center, ablenrc.org, and the Illinois, that will take you to the Illinois ABLE website, as well as ones for all the other state programs, and they can help you answer any more specific questions you have. And then again, before you open an account, or if you just open an account before you go much further, you can always talk with the caseworker for your benefits programs, whether it's SSI or Medicaid, about what the asset limits are for each of those programs. I want to thank you. I know we've gotten a lot of details here, but that's great. Any other questions? I think we may have time for one more question before we wrap things up. Right, let's see if there's any more. All right, well, thank you to the Margaret Hackett Family Program. Really am delighted to have this forum to get together and talk, and thank you all, the participants, for your time and questions. Thank you.
And again, this is Julie. Feel free to reach out to any of the organizations with questions, and we'd be more than happy to assist if you have anything, like I said, specific to your condition, specific resources, or anything else that we can offer. We're always here to help. Thank you.
All right, good night. Thank you.